It's so great to be with you today on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. Today is Friday, which is so impactful to me. Not that it's Friday, but that on our podcast and our YouTube show, you get to see and hear Clark Stinks, which is where you give me advice about how you feel I missed the mark and didn't serve you well. So later, there's an announcement from Target that is so out of left field, I was shocked, and I want to share it with you and what's important about it for you and your life. But without further ado, it is time for Clark Stinks.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
In a recent episode, Clark gave the advice to have the IRS send the taxpayer a PIN to prevent someone else from filing a fraudulent tax return. Great advice, but there are a few important facts that need to be mentioned. Once you have the IRS start issuing PINs, there is no way to stop them. You need to use a PIN each year when filing taxes. If you lose your PIN, you will either need to retrieve it from your irs.gov account or have one sent to you by snail mail. If all else fails, you can file your return on paper, but it will be delayed as extra scrutiny is applied to the return to ensure it's valid. So none of this seems like a big deal, but I am an AARP tax aid volunteer, and every year we have returns rejected because seniors forget they received a PIN and are unable to get a new one in a timely fashion since they don't have an online account with the IRS. This halts the whole return filing process and really causes a lot of confusion for some elderly taxpayers. The PINs are fine, but you need to know what you're signing up for and be prepared to recover it if you lose it. And that's from Doug. And I also received another one about this from a listener who said you didn't explain how convoluted and difficult it is to get the PIN established, so it took her a lot longer than she thought it would.
Okay, I thank both of you for those posts. I just think the problems with tax ID theft are so large, and they're not solved by having a credit freeze because you're not applying for credit with the IRS. And so I always owe money every year, so I'm not that worried. But if you are expecting money back, that's where this becomes so valuable.
Clark, you don't really stink, but you did give some tepid and somewhat smelly advice about printers lately. In a recent podcast, you stated there are no problems with many inkjet printers, especially with ink clogs and needing to use them at least once a week to keep them usable. That there are problems with many inkjet printers. Right. Sorry. I am here to tell you about the one I have found that has been totally awesome, the Epson EcoTank series. I've owned the Epson ET2400, a very economical printer that came with a complete set of ink tanks as opposed to cartridges. I use this printer on a very sporadic basis and have for several years. It always prints on demand, never needs cleaning and prompting, and has yet to run out of ink. I went through the trials you did with HP printers and Canon printers for years. No more. Now I print all I want when I want. Cliff,
this is basically a Christa stinks, not a Clark stinks, because you hate the Epson.
I don't hate it. I have one now that works. EcoTank.
EcoTank.
I have one now that works.
Oh, so you are happy with them?
I'm happy with this one, although some people, like in my household, can't figure out how to do it.
So the Epson is such a breakthrough product. My experience is that if you don't use it regularly, that I do have to go through a 4-minute thing to bring it back to where the nozzles are not clogged from lack of use. You're saying that has not been a problem for you with the Epson. I love that you never, ever, ever, ever will be ripped off on ink. And now there are some others doing the Epson model with some of their models where you pay for the printer and the ink basically is free, and it is a great business model.
For Clark, I love your show, but criticism's incoming. Your dismissal of how much of a person's retirement or spare time in life can be spent on the fulfilling hobby of golf stinks, worse than my 15-year-old golf shoes. Golf widows exist because of how all-consuming golf can be. I personally disc golf in addition to recently getting back into traditional ball golf with my dad. I can't get enough. The sun and exercise is great for health and well-being, and the challenge to improve engages the mind. Do you dismiss golf because you have an incurable slice, or because TaylorMade sued your pet Costco over patent violations for their Kirkland signature irons? I love the show, but I'd like to hear Clark's take on the clubs and my silly accusations. For the record, I'm single and not neglecting a wife. I've also purchased new golf shoes because the soles, spikes and all, fell off my old pair. Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, I am so glad that for you, having the ability to play whenever you want day after day has been a real joy in your life. My experience is a lot of people who think, oh, I'm going to retire, I'll be able to do this or that all the time. For most people, it doesn't work out either physically or practically as something that really can occupy their time. And the fact that it's worked for you, fantastic. You keep having fun. And I ducked for 4.
Clark and Christa both smell like microplastics in the belly of a catfish.
Woo!
Both of you discussed your indulgent use of dishwasher pods, which contribute to microplastics in our marine ecosystems. Laundry and dishwasher pods are made of polyvinyl alcohol, PVA. PVA is a synthetic polymer plastic that is marketed as dissolving in water. These synthetic plastic polymers seem to disappear in the wash process, but most PVA does not break down and disappear. Instead, these man-made materials change into smaller microbits of plastic that you can't see. They're so small that they wash down the drain. Then the particles end up being consumed by humans who eat off the quote-unquote clean dishes or end up in our waterways contributing to more plastic pollution. Richard.
Richard, I didn't know any of that, and obviously I need to read more about it. And if it's true, then we won't use the little pouches for dishwashers.
Clark frequently categorizes the use of fax communications as antiquated and obsolete, with likely only medical practices using this outdated technology. Actually, many businesses still use this older tech as a much more secure, immediate mode of communication than other types such as email. The key here is immediate and secure. I was recently forced to use fax as the faster, more secure electronic means in 2 situations, one with a major insurance company and the other with the Internal Revenue Service. By the way, I use my free Google Voice line with my all-in-one printer to complete the tasks. John.
John, thank you. It seems so like ancient to use faxing as a way to do things. Your way of faxing, though, with the Google Voice is really, really smart.
Clark, you don't stink, but your constant recommendation that listeners freeze their credit is missing an important detail. For years, I've been a daily listener of the show, and for years I avoided freezing my credit. My score has been gradually climbing over the past decade, and I wanted to delay a credit freeze until my score finally crossed the magical and meaningless number 800. As you might have guessed, I was under the misapprehension that freezing my credit would also freeze my credit score. When you give this advice, please mention that a credit freeze is not a credit score freeze. Including this small detail will help other nincompoops like me avoid the same mistake. Zach.
Zach, first of all, you're not a nincompoop. You're obviously very good with how you handle money. You have made it into 800 territory. I'm not there. My wife is there, though.
I'm there.
Do you know what you're there? So congratulations to those of you that are perfect. Christa also was a good student in school. I was not. And Zach, that you've made it to 800 means they call you golden. Basically, you become golden depending on how a particular financial institution looks at it, when your credit score hits 760 or 780. But people love being in the 800 club.
In a recent podcast, you mentioned that we are short of 1 million homes. That is not a real fact. The fact is that from 2022, these large companies have started to buy all available properties and are renting them out. They are just pricing out the regular home buyers. One statistic shows that almost 2/3 of the homes sold in the last 3 years were bought by hedge funds. Should the government pass some regulations on some accumulations before we keep building more homes to be gobbled up by these trillion-dollar funds? Haseb.
Haseb, thank you. The buying of homes by private equity for renting out really is a rearview mirror thing that's not been happening in any meaningful numbers in the last couple of years for the same reason that individuals have passed on buying homes. The economics don't work for private equity. As far as the supply of homes in the United States, we're short way past 1 million. Most estimates I see, we're about 4 million housing units short in the United States. And by the way, that's not a measurement of homes and apartments and condos for rent or for sale. It is all together because the housing shortage is all encompassing. And it's not just, if you think of the narrow thing of single family homes, it's all housing units we are severely short of. And we are still several years away from closing that gap. It will close, but the gap happened for a lot of different reasons, and it's an ugly, ugly thing, especially right now for people who want to buy a home.
Clark is correct that the USPS is run poorly and faces a lot of issues, including overworked employees. Clark stinks because he didn't put forth a solution, which is to encourage people to apply and work at the post office. Initially, it doesn't pay that well, around $20 an hour, but if someone's willing to work hard and put in some time, the compensation can be very good. The top pay for a letter carrier is over $75,000 per year plus overtime. There are 11 paid holidays, up to 5 weeks of vacation, and 2 things Clark knows are valuable: a pension and the thrift savings plan with a 4% match from Uncle Sam. I've been a carrier for over 25 years, and it's the worst I've seen in my career. Even though I don't want to work as much as I have been, due to the issues with staffing, I've made over $100,000 every year since COVID started escalating shopping from home to unprecedented levels. Yes, Clark, thanks to your advice, I've always put a lot into the TSP and my Roth. I hope to retire at age 57, the minimum retirement age at the post office.
Wow.
Also, the USPS and Letter Carrier Union are in negotiations for a new contract, which will hopefully increase pay to be more competitive with the recent settlement UPS had with their drivers. Please tell your audience if they know someone willing to work hard and put in the time, it can be a worthwhile career, very similar to working in the trades. Anonymous Mailman.
Anonymous Mailman, thank you so much for your post. And I've talked several times over the last couple of years about the opportunities for employment in government jobs at the federal, state, local levels right now, a very large number of vacancies. And as people may be facing layoffs in different jobs, this is an area potentially to look at that most people don't look at, is the jobs available from government. And I know that people will say Postal Service isn't government. It has the thrift savings plan. It is a federal program. It is a governmental thing.
Clark, we love you and listen on long trips with the whole family. We want our kids to follow your advice as well. You mentioned you should not book for a short-term rental outside of VRBO or Airbnb, but as the owner of a short-term rental property company, I respectfully disagree. If you can find an owner who has their own website to collect payments via a secure payment processing company using your credit card, is the best value option to book direct. VRBO and Airbnb charge up to 12 to 15% to book on their sites. This can cost the consumer several hundreds of dollars. We agree paying via Zelle or Venmo is a red flag, but paying with a credit card protects you and saves you money. Rick.
Rick, this is so timely. Christa, do you know the New York Times just did a long-form story saying exactly what Rick said?
Oh.
That if you can book direct with someone and you can pay by credit card, that makes more money for the landlord, makes more money for you. My caution, Rick, is that you've got to be so careful because you could be dealing with a fraudster who is renting a phantom property. And that's where the credit card should offer meaningful protection to the renter.
But for how long? Like, that's the
60
problem.
days.
Yeah.
So you don't want to book a property where your money is paid by credit card more than 60 days in advance, because then if the landlord turns out to be bogus, it's a phantom property, you have no place to stay, and you've lost your money.
And then what if the alleged landlord is in a foreign country? Do you lose your rights?
So that's a very interesting wrinkle. If you're paying by credit card to someone who is posing as a landlord, let's say at the beach somewhere in the U.S., and they're actually receiving the payment overseas, it would be unlikely that a foreign con artist would be able to maintain credit card charging privileges. I guess that is possible. So, in deference to you and the New York Times, I'll say, yes, there is opportunity here, but there still is the hazard of risk for the tenant that would be renting from you, Rick. So thank you so much for all your posts on Clark Stinks. And I want to tell you, you have no idea how much I look forward to Clark Stinks and appreciate it, because there are two things. One, I could be flat out wrong about something or failed to see a perspective, and that really, really helps. And then the second thing is that I learned there are times that the way I've explained something, I failed. That your perception of what I meant is not at all what I intended to say, and it's helpful on all these levels. So thank you for taking the time to post your Clark Stinks. Coming up ahead, I want to talk about a change happening at Target that I didn't even know was something you could do. I want to tell you how much things have changed, and if you haven't changed, you need to do so. Okay, I teased something about Target that I didn't spill the goods, because when I saw this last month, I was like, huh? They did? Okay, only in the last few weeks did Target stop taking personal checks. I didn't know you could write a personal check. I mean, anytime I'm anywhere and I see somebody bring out a checkbook to pay at a register, I'm like, what? I mean, man, let me tell you, there's almost nothing you could do that is more dangerous to your finances than carry a checkbook on your person or in a purse or something like that. The way checks work legally and practically and functionally is so antiquated that carrying and using a checkbook in daily life, I mean, you're asking for trouble like you cannot imagine. Somebody steals a check of yours, or even just has the numbers from the bottom of your check, do you know you can end up in jail? You, the person whose checkbook was stolen. It's crazy, because the law treats you as the criminal when a criminal passes a check as if they're you. Retailers hate taking a check because so often they're phony. It's a check that is not actually yours, written by somebody else. They end up swearing out a warrant for your arrest. They arrest you falsely. You're not the criminal. You might have to hire a criminal defense attorney. And then what are you going to do? You're going after the retailer that falsely had you arrested. It's a no-win scenario for you as a consumer to ever carry a checkbook with you, ever. And it's a no-win scenario for a retailer that ever, for some reason, thinks they want to accept a check. There are family-owned small businesses that still want to get paid by check. And for you as a consumer, if you're buying something that they're going to have to order for you that you're not going to get till later, you are putting yourself, your money in real danger, paying by check for whatever they're ordering. Because if they go bust or whatever happens, gosh, have we had this so many times over the years, you lose your money. If you pay that deposit by credit card, as we were talking about just earlier in Clark Stinks, you have protections that are ironclad for 60 days and become more iffy after that, but still give you more rights than if you write a check. A criminal who has the transit numbers off the bottom of your check has a license to steal and a license to cause you to be arrested when all you were was a victim of crime and of identity theft. This one's big time bad stuff. You know what else, as I talked about recently? Sending a check through the mail, you are asking for trouble. Criminal rings are stealing what appear to be checks going in the mail all the time. And then they're duplicating those checks, or they're washing them and putting new payees and maybe new amounts. And then suddenly, your checking account's empty. You're having to fight to get your own money back. In my TV work, we had a situation recently with someone who $11,000 was stolen from them, and the bank is like, not our problem. Check washed. It is the bank's problem, by the way. As long as you notice, in what period of time? 60 days. Goes past 60 days, money's gone. So know that any other method, pretty much, other than writing a check or using Zelle, is a better way for you to pay whatever. Checks are dangerous, antiquated, and you should be very, very thoughtful and careful ever writing one. Christa, how many checks do you actually write in a year?
I think I've written like 2 in the last year, maybe.
It's unreal how few checks most of us ever write anymore.
And they were both for like home service things where I would have been charged more to use a credit card. So I wrote checks.
Please tell me you weren't paying in advance.
No.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
All right. We'll go to questions. Cynthia in Georgia says, I have a mortgage disability policy with my insurance company that increases in cost every year. I pay $193.33 a month.
A month?
This gets me $950 a month for 36 months after a 60-day waiting period if I file a claim. I feel like this is
What?
too much. Are there any other mortgage disability policies that you can recommend?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Cynthia, this is your insurer that's supposed to be taking care of you? Oh, they're taking care of you all right. Those numbers again were $130 something a month.
$193.33 a month.
A month premium for a cap benefit of $900 a month?
$950 a month for 36 months after a 60-day waiting period.
Cynthia, I am shallow breathing right now. This is highway robbery, unacceptable stuff. I mean, you think about over time, if you just put that $193 a month into a savings account, you'd be better off. I mean, this is a total ripoff, and it's unconscionable that it was sold to you. Discontinue it. First of all, mortgage disability, or what's known as, that's called choke. So they call it behind our backs, they call it mortgage croak and choke insurance. It's one of the most profitable products sold. It's why when people take out a mortgage, they get all these solicitations in the mail. And these policies are sold at premiums that are many, 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 many times what actuarial tables, the finances say should be charged. So Cynthia, I am not in favor of buying narrow coverages. This is an example of narrow coverage. If you suffer from a disability, you want to be paid a monthly amount to use however you wish, not to service the mortgage, but to deal with the expenses you have in your life that you don't have income for because you're disabled. So you really would not want to have any kind of mortgage disability or mortgage life insurance. It is trash insurance. So if you wanted disability insurance to provide income to you in the event you cannot work for a period of time, you buy disability insurance, not mortgage disability, which is just garbage. And so you would go to an insurance agent and ask, if they don't sell it, to refer you to a disability insurance broker, and that's what you would want.
All right, take a deep breath. I know that one's tough. We haven't heard about that in a while. Dave in Ohio says, Clark, we were approached by a solar company as a model home for their solar panels. They gave us a quote for a monthly amount for 25 years, but we will no longer have to pay for electricity, supply, and distribution. Our bill will show zero from the electric company, and our bill for electricity will never go up. When paid off, we will no longer have to pay for any electricity. Of course, by then, we probably won't know what day it is. Do you have any information regarding solar? We love the idea, but are a little apprehensive.
You should be way apprehensive, Dave.
I don't buy the model home thing. You're going to be a model home.
Yeah, I never, ever, ever trust any of these things where you sign a financial obligation for 25 years. You're creating a liability obligation against their promise that you'll have no utility bill. And that promise will not be contractually obligated. But there's no doubt that the monthly payment you have to make is contractually obligated. Don't go near this. I don't like any of these plans at all that involve you signing a long-term contract, loan agreement, or lease on solar. And it is just a big fat lie sales technique to tell you, we're going to make this special deal to you. And you're going to be a model home where we can take people by and show them our work. And as a benefit of this, you will never have a power bill again. Baloney, baloney, baloney. If we were not a family show, it would be different.
Okay, and this is from Greg in California. He actually wrote this in before the stuff with Southwest happened, but he basically wants to know, what do you think about the changes with Southwest?
As a longtime Southwest loyalist, I'm somebody who so embraces change. And for some reason, I don't know why, I just love the randomized seat selection. It's so much more efficient, but customers apparently hate it. And so now they're going to have, instead of being egalitarian on the plane, now they're going to have, extra legroom seats, and then they're going to have regular coach, and it's going to have 1 inch less legroom in regular coach to make the extra legroom for people in their economy plus or whatever they're going to call it. So what it means is they're becoming more like other airlines, at least in the customer interface. But a lot of other things they do remain different. Having only one kind of aircraft makes it a much more efficient operation. But I just hate losing the randomized.
So I guess you won't. I wonder if you'll still line up, like maybe by.
They'll still. Well, all the airlines are moving to a system of having people be in different boarding groups because of what's known as gate lice. And gate lice is where it was such a problem for American, United, and Delta, where people would cluster around the gate, and it was chaos and tension and
I feel
anxiety.
like it still is. I mean, there have always been boarding groups, but they're just,
But not like now. Like, the airlines, the full fare airlines now have as many as 9 boarding
right,
groups.
there are more.
And who was I flying recently that now has a boarding group 0?
Oh my gosh.
So one wasn't good enough to start with. Now they have boarding group 0. So the idea is to try to get people to feel less anxiety by slicing the boarding groups into smaller sectors. And so I think that Southwest really taught American, United, and Delta how to reduce the chaos at their gates. And so I think they'll employ some of that even with the seat assignments going forward. But I don't like it. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I went through the Southwest meltdown a year and a half ago and got quite a kick out of the memes because Southwest in the recent software meltdown didn't have any problems at all and flew full schedules. And there were all these memes saying, of course, because they're still using computer systems from 1992. And Southwest was really antiquated with their computers, and it looks like in this case, it actually benefited them. But enough about that. Enjoy your weekend, and look forward to seeing you on our podcast. If you watch the YouTube show, you'll see me. If you listen to the audio version, you'll hear me on Monday. And know what we're about is about you learning ways to save more and spend less and avoid getting ripped off. And all weekend long, you can continue to follow that by going to Clark.com and ClarkDeals.com.